Hey everyone, welcome and thank you for joining. Today we're going to explore how multinational corporations work and why they matter in the global economy. We'll start with the basic concept of what an MNC is, and then move into deeper topics like competitive advantage, the OLI framework, and the global value chains, which all help explain why companies expand across borders. We'll also look at tools like Porter's Diamond Theory and the Five Forces framework to understand how MNCs compete internationally. Then, using the business model canvas, we'll see how these corporations manage complex global operations. And finally, we'll dive into a real world case study. Nike in China, a great example of how global brands adapt to local competition and consumer preferences. Let's get started. So, what is an MNC? A multinational corporation is a company that operates in more than one country. It usually has its headquarters in one country, often called the home country, while it runs business operations like productions or sales in other countries, known as host countries. MNC have a global presence, but they often manage strategy and decisions making centrally from their headquarters. Next, I will explain the competitive advantage. Refers to the ability of a company, a country, or even an individual to deliver goods or services more effectively or efficiently than others. This advantage helps them succeed in a competitive market, often leading to higher profits or stronger global positioning. The most well-known framework comes from Michael Porter's, who identified three main strategies: cost leadership, differentiation, and focus. In short, if you can offer better value either through lower costs or unique features, you gain an edge over your rivals. Now let's look at how this idea evolved. It started with Adam Smith's theories of absolute advantage, where a country should produce only what it can make better than others. Then came David Ricardo's comparative advantage, which said even if a country isn't the best at producing something, it should still specialize in what it's relatively better at doing. Eventually, we move from natural advantage like resources or geography to strategic advantage such as innovations, branding, and knowledge. That's where Michael Porter's a competitive advantage comes in, focusing on how business create value beyond just efficiency. But there's also a deeper philosophical angle. John Locke, a 17th century philosopher, argued that people gain a property rights through their labor. In other words, when someone mixes their labor with resources, they create something of value and they have the right to own it. In this slide, I want to talk about two things that help us understand why multinational companies expand globally and how they decide where and how to invest. Let's start with the motives. So, why do companies go international? Usually, it comes down to four main reasons. First is market seeking. They want access to more customers. For example, if a company has already saturated its home market, going abroad means a chance to grow sales. Second is a research seeking. Sometimes companies need something they can't easily get at home, like cheaper labor, raw materials, or specific skills. Third is efficiency seeking. This is about cutting costs and improving productivity by doing different parts of their operations in the most efficient places. And lastly, we had strategic asset seeking. This means acquiring something valuable like well-known brands or local knowledge to boost their global positions. Now, how do companies decide how to enter a foreign market? That's where the eclectic method, also called the Olive framework by John Dunning, comes in. Here's the breakdown. O is for ownership advantage. This means the company has something valuable like a strong brand, unique technology, or expertise that gives it an edge when competing abroad. L is for location advantage. Company look at what each country offers: low cost, big market, skilled workers, and so on. They pick locations that match their goals. I is for internalization's advantage. This is about control. Instead of partnering or licensing, some companies prefer to own and manage operations by themselves, especially to protect their brands or technology. Right now is GVC, Global Value Chains. So, have you ever heard of the global value chain? It's basically how companies break up the process of making a product and spread it out across different countries. Let's take Nike. Let's take Nike as an example. Nike Designs is shoes in the US. That's where all the creative stuff happens. But when it comes to actually making the shoes, most of that happens in places like Vietnam, Indonesia, and China, where production is cheaper. Then, the finished product gets shipped all over the world, and Nike uses its strong global branding and marketing to sell them everywhere. So instead of doing everything in one country, Nike uses the best part of different countries to make the whole process faster, cheaper, and more efficient. And that's what we call a global value chain. Pretty cool, right? Next, we have Diamond Theory in 5 forces. Forces Diamond Theory explains why certain countries are competitive in specific industries. It identifies 4 key determinants: factor conditions, domestic demand, related and supporting industries, and firm, strategy, and rivalry. Meanwhile, the 5 forces framework is used to analyze the competitive dynamic within an industry by examining 5 market forces: the threat of new entrants, bargaining power of suppliers and buyers, the threat of substitute products, and the intensity of industry rivalry. Together, these 2 frameworks are valuable tools for understanding how multinational corporations operate, compete, and interact with host countries in global market. When we look at the multinational corporations through a lens of the business model canvas, we see how they manage complexity across different countries. For example, their key partner might include local suppliers, logistic providers, or even government bodies, depending on the market. Their key activities go beyond just making and selling products. They have to adapt to local preferences, manage global supply chains, and sometimes innovate differently in each region. They rely on key resources like a diverse international workforce, a globally recognized brand, and strong digital infrastructure. The value proposition is often about delivering consistent quality worldwide, while still making sure the product or service feel relevant locally. They rely on key researchers like a diverse international workforce, a global recognized brand, and strong digital infrastructure. The value proposition is often about delivering consistent quality worldwide, while still making sure the product or service feel relevant locally. In terms of customer relationships, MNCs have to build trust engagement in different cultural settings. Their channels can range from local retail stores to global e-commerce platforms, and because they operate across so many regions, their customer segments are incredibly diverse. Sometimes business clients, sometimes individual. Their customer segments are incredibly diverse. Sometimes business client, sometimes individual consumer. Naturally, their cost structure is complex. They deal with shipping, localizations, and complying with various regulations. On the revenue side, they earn money through global sales. Lastly, let's start with the basics. Nike come to China with a clear goal to grow its global market by tapping into China's huge populations, growing middle class, and raising interest in sport and fitness. Over the years, China has become one of Nike's biggest and most important markets outside the US. In terms of strategy, Nike relies on a few key things. First, product diversification. Nike doesn't just sell sports shoes. It offers products for serious athletes, casual wearers, fashion-conscious youth, and more. In China, it even created special editions for local holidays or themes, like Chinese New Year collections. Then, there's R&D and innovations. Nike invests a lot of technology, not just products, but also in digital platforms like its apps and online stores. That helps it connect directly with customers and personalize their experience. But Nike facing tough competitions, especially from Anta is now China's biggest sportswear company. It offers quality products at more affordable prices, and it's really strong smaller cities. Plus, it owns several international brands like Villa China, so it's not just local player anymore. And now Li-Ning. Li-Ning takes a different approach. It designs mix modern streetwear with Chinese cultural elements. To stay competitive, Nike uses a hybrid internalization strategy. That means it controls most of its own operations in China, but also partners with big local platforms like Tmall and JD.com. It also works with Chinese athletes and influencers to localize its image while staying true to its global brands. So, what's the takeaway? Nike is still a top brand in China, but the market is shifting. Anta and Li-Ning aren't just catching up, they are setting trends, especially with the younger consumers. If Nike wants to stay relevant, it needs to do more than sell high-performance gear. It has to keep innovating, listen to local consumer, and how that it really understand and respect Chinese culture. And here's my references. Thank you for watching, and I hope this presentation has given you a clearer picture of how global and local strategies collide in one of the world's most dynamic markets. Thank you.